We're gonna let the temperature come down. It's been 100 and something. Yeah. No, it'll be, got a busy September coming up, but.
Had a friend that
September is here.
Pardon?
Busy September here.
Oh, well, here, but then also riding lawnmower that I got, old John Deere, backfiring.
Oh, no.
So, last time we rode with Lynn was spraying.
We're live, Tina.
I'm gonna give Susan 2 more minutes to see if she comes. I'm gonna go ahead and call the meeting to order. All right, roll call. Marlene is here, Roger's here, Carl is here. Brian is here. And we have, at the moment, Susan and Colton are absent. Do we have a motion
Make a motion to approve?
Second.
to approve that we excuse them? Excuse them, that we excuse them? Excuse Susan and Colton,
Oh,
right?
okay.
Yeah, okay. All right, motion was made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? They are excused. Okay. Doesn't look like we have any guest business. But I do
If
think,
could, have the floor for just a second before you go on.
I was just gonna say, I
Okay.
do wanna, we don't have a guest per se, but we have a new person in the room that probably needs to be introduced.
Yes. So we want to welcome Sarah Garceau tonight. She's coming to us from Oregon, from a county jurisdiction, and she will be the city's first Parks Director, taking over the role that I've filled for a number of years, and then also take on the operations side from Public Works. So we're super excited to have Sarah here and see where she can take our Parks and Rec programming. So
Very exciting.
everyone, welcome her.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Whereabouts in Oregon?
Grants Pass from Josephine County.
Ah,
Okay.
down there a ways.
Is that where you're originally from, Oregon?
I moved there when I was 8,
Mhm.
so I was from Burbank, California, Southern
Okay.
California.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm so excited.
Now
We're growing up.
Now that she's here, are you two gonna be disappearing or are you gonna still be at our meetings?
This will probably be my last park board meeting. I might show up occasionally, and I'll still be working with Sarah in the background.
Okay.
And Natalie will probably transition out over the next few months when we figure out what that looks like.
Geez, we should have had cupcakes.
Yeah.
I know. So will Jill be here?
Most likely, that'll be something Sarah and Jill
Are gonna
figure
work
together.
out? Okay, we're not that far. Okay. All right, so let's move on to action items. Did everybody get a chance to read the minutes for June and July? We amended.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve June 13th and July 21st meeting minutes.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, they are approved as written. So we are on to discussion items, and I'm turning over Sunset Park Open House and Survey to Russ.
Great. Thank you all. So just wanted to bring back the results of our public outreach for Sunset Park. You hosted the open house at your last meeting, and we had 3 neighbors and obviously the board, the consultants, and then the mayor were in attendance, and we wanted to get a little broader feedback on the project. So we did launch a parks survey, and the results were actually fairly consistent with what the park board had talked about. We asked a series of questions, wanted some demographic questions. We also wanted to find out some preferences. So that was really the big question for the park, to ask individuals what would they emphasize in the design of the park, giving them a few options: cost, environmental concerns, emergency access, and accessibility. And overwhelmingly, the accessibility became the primary feature that folks wanted to see in the park, followed by environmental protection, which fits very well into the alternatives that we had looked at, providing that winding path down to the beachfront, and then doing the low impact development and rain gardens where we could. So the design's very much in line with what the community desired. Anecdotally at Aquafest, I talked to lots of people about the park design, and generally everyone very, very supportive and excited about this project. You know, traffic being another concern, and parking that wasn't on this list, but we didn't include that because we knew that there wasn't a grand solution for the parking there. It's just, again, one of those issues we kind of have to accept with the redesign of this park. There were some open-ended questions where we just asked people to summarize some other thoughts. So in your staff report, in the second paragraph, it goes over some of those issues. Obviously, ramp access was mentioned, shade, which is something also we had talked about, beach access. There was also, from our public meeting and from the online survey, a desire to see cameras, potentially a larger dock, shoreline plantings. And then there was a discussion about irrigation or other types of amenities. So since that point, and talking with our designer, we are talking about what would the cost be to bring utilities to that site. Obviously, there's a power pole right there, so power is readily available. I'm not sure what the telecom situation is on that pole, but for the cameras, you usually need like fiber optic or something like that. So that's something we're going to explore. And we are talking about, do we want to go ahead and add water onto the site as well? Probably not sewer, possibly water for irrigation, even if it's metered irrigation for only a couple of years. And then the thought, like we did at North Cove, and as we have at Lundin, a wash-off station is something we're actually contemplating, as well as we get some of the warm water lake issues. So, all in all, though, the public comments really align with the design and the comments from the park board. So just wanted to bring that forward and see if there was any further discussion from the park board on Sunset Park before we have our designers going to the next phase, which would be doing the construction plans, where no turning back once we start down that path. So
Have they, excuse me, have they determined what the final plan was? Because I think they had 2 or 3 plans with phases in it. Have you narrowed it down to what plan that they're actually looking at?
So there, sort of a misnomer talking about phases. There really won't be phases to that park. Just the scale of the redevelopment and the complications to phase that aren't practical. I mean, we have to do all the grading sort of at one time. So I think from an economic standpoint and a return standpoint, enlarging the beach to the north just doesn't make a lot of sense, because you only gain a couple hundred square feet of beach area for a couple $100,000 worth of grading and wall costs. So that's probably a non-starter from sort of a stewardship sort of perspective, at least a dollars and cents perspective. And the other option is they just wanted to get some feedback on how far should they bring ADA compliance. So I think what they're going to work towards is probably a hybrid solution. They would like the trail all the way to the bottom. And as they move forward with their final design, I think was suggested by, was getting the upper platform as ADA consistent as possible. So when we're talking about accessibility and ADA, and Sarah reminded me of this earlier today, they're not always the same thing.
Right.
So ADA is a fully compatible site. We know that this site is never going to be that way, but we can have it accessible with exceptions based on the grade, ramps, landings. And so that's going to be,
and that would still be ADA compliant.
It will be accessible. It will not be fully ADA compliant.
need to be ADA full? Do
We
we
do
have to?
not.
Okay,
And we provided fully ADA accessible shoreline access at least 3 other parks
okay,
in, within a couple of miles of it. So we don't necessarily
Okay,
do that.
we're
need to do
good.
that. But our goal was to have it as usable and as functional
yes,
for as many people with different capabilities as possible. And so
okay,
that is going to be where we land.
okay,
So really, there weren't phases, Roger, to your question, there were some alternatives they suggested, and that was all really relative to what kind of a path do we want, and they were all versions of the same plan.
Right.
Do we want to just have a path at the top? Do we want a path all the way down? Or do we want a path with a less steep grade at the top and then gets steeper as you go towards the bottom? So
Well, I remember too, though, is that plan, one of the phases, we talked about making more beach access, I believe it was the south end, and you said, well, we have to make the decision before they started it. And I'm just
Yes.
wondering if that's been included into that, or are we just gonna not do
and that's
that?
what I'm saying, that really was a mislabeling and a misnomer, that the scale of this project doesn't lend itself
Okay.
to being constructed in phases, and then just that financial analysis to do that extra beach area is very, very costly.
Okay.
So I would think that's our starting point, that, they're not going to show it as phases. And then again, we're just trying to concentrate on how do we get the path down to the dock and the beach area in the most functional
mhm,
manner.
mhm,
And then there is still some discussion on design that we can come back with on the shape of the dock. And that's discussion I actually had with some folks at Aquafest and other staff. Do we want to do something that's more like the pier that we have at, say, Davies Beach? Or do we want to do sort of the L kind of dock that was out there today? Well, it's more of a platform. So there are some different options, and that site's a little bit unique where the water isn't as deep as it is at Davies. So having the circular pier, really, you might not get the swimming depth water. It would be more wading depth like you have at Ladine, because people are actually swimming on the outside. Or is it to do an L and then just have a rope buoy around the outside of that to designate the swimming area? So those are, I think the dock design will still have a little bit more conversation, but in general, the plan they showed with some minor modifications, I think, is consistent with the community's desires and then, what the board talked about.
The areas to tie your boat up, or you don't want any boats at all in there?
Well, that's been kind of a conversation, and historically, it hasn't had boat tie-ups. And Carl would be the one to talk probably best to that. There is a big rocky outcropping in the vicinity there that might not be great for people who don't know the water very well there. So that's still something we can circle back to. But right now, I think it's really not providing that function that we have at Davies and at North Cove.
And one more thing about boating. What about people that are in kayaks or canoe? Can they shoot in there? Is it going to be all roped off for the swimming area?
I think that's a very easy thing to accommodate. We could have some mooring buoys or something. So I think, for small watercraft, that's something we could look at as their staging area. Carl? I'm sorry.
Along that same, people would be arriving and carrying and launching. So it wouldn't be a good idea to have incoming boats there.
No,
It's
not
gotta be
from
a
up top.
non-boat. But looking at the plan and then listening to people at Aquafest at the booth, which Russ and the gang had a tremendous layout. Really, I was amazed how many people were interested. Most people just don't always seem to, but there was comments and they looked around and everything. And I've been thinking about it since we had our last meeting. The more stuff we put in, the less space there is for people. So that's going to be a hard decision, but I went by it today and there was probably 15 people, and there was actually a couple of car spaces from the water side. But I think that we really have to look at we'd like more, I think, for more people. And so some of our design, I think we should, trees are nice, but that's my thought.
I would agree with Carl. I think that's important that we have enough space. So like when we talk about the dock and we talk about maybe expanding it, I think that would be an important feature to have. What's the timeline?
So probably this will be a 2023 budget request
Okay,
and possibly go into construction next summer. I don't see why we wouldn't be able to. It's all, you know, funding dependent.
okay,
And so that becomes really the next step for us. So we'll have potentially three park projects under construction in 2023
okay.
and then another one in 24. So we'll just have to look at our budget
We'd have,
capacity and figure out.
we would have Eagle Ridge, the dog park, and this one. What about the community center?
Well, we have lots of projects. So we have Davies Beach, the next phase, which
Oh,
will
that's right,
be,
Davies Beach. too.
so we're getting the floating docks put in right now. We'll come back to
Oh,
that
you're gonna do
later.
parks up. You're
Yeah,
gonna do
we'll
parks.
circle back on some
Yeah,
of these things.
never.
We do have a lot of park
Yeah, that's fine.
projects possibly going to construction
Yeah.
next year.
What can we do to manage people's concern about the safety of the park as far as people not doing things doing things they should not be doing in city parks?
Well, and that's an issue we have at all parks. Obviously, we will refresh our signs out there. There's still the county signs, so I mean, they'll just be sort of that regulatory portion. We've talked about adding the electricity and the fiber to the site so we can install the cameras and have, so if we build those picnic structures or the shade structures, I should say, where they're at, you should be able to get coverage
Mhm.
with 4 cameras, that entire park. So I think that's something we'll just do. That'll add to the budget, but for the security concerns, it's probably important.
In the meantime, before we start construction, can we get more of a police presence out there to just check a couple times a day? I know they're
Probably
stretched.
not.
Okay.
They're, yes, the police are trying to make their rounds through all of the parks, and I don't want to speak for them, but I know just like across the whole nation, they're having pretty significant staffing
Yeah,
issues.
I know.
Trying to keep full staff to do patrols and
Yeah,
everything else. So, you know, drive-bys, yes, getting out and physically probably not as likely.
okay. But could we put a request in?
Yeah, we do frequently on
Okay,
the park properties.
okay.
This is Brian. I talked with one of the police officers down at Davies Beach just about cars parking in the trailer spots, because I've seen that happening a lot lately. And they said they don't even have parking enforcement there anymore. They're so short-staffed. Their parking enforcement person retired, and that guy was just. I asked him, I was like, "Well, how are you able to spend time down here?" And he was just there because of the drowning thing and wanted to make sure that people were safe. So I can tell you from firsthand experience, they're very short-staffed.
Yeah, I remember that they're hiring. I remember that was one of the job descriptions I saw out there. Talk with them.
Brian, did you have any other thoughts about the park design or the feedback?
Hey, Russ, just a question on that, going back to the parking situation. Is the Davies Beach, that's the city now, right? The parking area?
Yes.
Are you still there? Brian? Can you hear us now? We're not hearing you.
Well, we'll come back, Brian. Brian, have any thoughts?
Ending the accessible ramp, partly down on the south, edge. It's shady most of it. And then the people that sit there, watch the sunset, shade thing there, well, bushes and trees. So, I like the idea of accessible ramp. There that they can park.
I really like the stone steps down too, and making them long and wide so people can sit on them. I really like that.
Trees down there to bring more. Well, that's fine, bring more people putting it. It's already clustered apart. It would limit the number of people down there if there's no place to go. But I think some of the trees maybe should go, but I would.
Think about it in 3D. I mean, there are some code requirements already that you have to have the buffers.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Facility and the park, the trees interior to the park, think of them 3 dimensions that they're not designed to take over the whole space. They limit the space, and the first limbs are going to be 6 feet, so people will still be able to be under. Take away space.
It's not gonna 6 feet around.
Have another big leaf maple
Yeah.
smack dab in the middle of the lawn that is 8 feet around.
Another suggestion, and I don't know if it's ever worked, but have they ever thought about like a city patrol, just volunteers from neighborhoods just to go through the parks and just, see anything really bad, report it to the police, or?
We have a citizens patrol. I don't know what they do and don't do, so we can talk about that. Sarah and I will be talking about other options for this coming budget season, if there are any other suggestions. Okay, anything else specific about the plan?
Brian?
Yeah, I hope just up Third Street from that park for 30 years. And it's up consistently on summer long, about 10 cars park along and just have a fence there that they came in the county close to the dusk or something. But it seems to change much. People have always used that park. They walk from up in places that are used to it. So a lot of people drive. It's always been quite popular.
Parks director and I have been talking about parking solution. It's not on site, but we're talking about as we continue to build out Stevens multi-use path. One of the next phases will go north, and so we've talked about if there's enough right of way to be able to do the trail through that section connecting Purple Pennant to the next road down, and also adding parking lanes, so there is possibly some on-street parking, but again, the park is only so large to accommodate, so many. But that's probably a couple of years off.
No, I know, sir, Pat, we didn't get a picture of the thing. Is that online so we can look? Pick a copy. Super.
Brian, can you hear this? Yeah, we had issues at one of
Yeah,
our
Brian,
last
we can't hear
meetings
you
with
now.
the people in the audience not being able to. So not on. I'm sorry, Roger, can you repeat your, oh, the plan design? It hasn't changed since the last meeting. And I don't
We
think
didn't
it's,
get a copy.
yeah, I don't think it's online.
Is it
Natalie,
online?
can you make sure that you send a copy of the sunset plan to all of them? The plan. Okay, Brian, can you hear us yet? Well,
Okay.
it's a bummer. Okay, any other thoughts on this? Yeah.
Okay,
I think that the design is really nice, and I hope that, you know, we can fulfill the dream to build the park that we saw, because it's a beautiful park, and it's so suited for that area too.
I agree. I really liked it. I mean, for first trying, it was exactly what we needed.
Exactly.
Mhm. Okay, anybody else have any comments or questions? Then we are up for Parks Update.
Okay, we'll just run through the list. So we've ordered the skate park elements that we talked about earlier, and we've also got the ping pong table and a couple of game tables ordered. Those should be installed in the fall. We'll get some volunteer groups together to assemble the little skate park features, and then our public works crew will install those.
What about the ping pong table? What did they finally decide to do?
We ordered one.
No, but what, because there was a few different kinds of materials.
No, we got a concrete one.
Got it.
Oh, that, okay.
Yeah, it weighs about 4,000 pounds, and it's going to sit out here and never move again.
Don't ask me to help with that.
Yes, big forklift.
And they bring their own net?
It will have a net that's built in. It's a metal net that has cutout. So people will have to bring in their own paddles and their own balls.
Nice.
And Sarah's already thought about that a little bit, that if in the future, if there's another system, that if we want to provide that, but for right
Right.
now, it's bring your own equipment.
Right, right. Susan, are you with us now? Is that what I heard?
Looks like it says connected to audio. And then for Davies Beach, the floating docks, the old docks have been removed, and we have a couple of sections of the new dock in that attach to the shore, and the piles for that dock should be driven today. So
Yeah.
the project's on schedule, and the guys that have gone out there said the docks feel great. They look great, driven by there a couple of times. So pretty exciting.
Oh, that's great.
So we're still waiting to get our contract for Eagle Ridge Park. It goes under a federal contract, so it's a little slower than some of the state projects. And we're hoping, there's a possibility we could get to construction in 23, but I think it's more likely that we'll get to construction at Eagle Ridge in 24.
How does that work
Yeah,
with the
what,
national park?
Yeah.
You said it's a lower standard or
A higher standard.
a higher standard?
Mhm.
Ah. So what would we do with the money? We're gonna get money from them to work on the park?
Well, we've been awarded a grant for Eagle Ridge Park to build out those remaining sections of the master plan, to do the amphitheater, to do the playground, the
Okay.
parking, and all of the things you've envisioned at the master plan. It's just the procurement policy is a lot slower because they're the federal guidelines. We've already started some of the preliminary work. We've done our archaeological survey out there, our cultural resources survey, and we have to do environmental next. So there'll be a lot of phases.
This is a giant step.
Yeah,
So as a national park, I mean, have they been involved in any of the other parks, or is it just because this one's kind of secluded?
no, it's the pass through from the Recreation and Conservation Office because they have several different funding sources they grant from. And some of those are federal, some of those are state sources. This one happens to be
That's for some.
a federal
And the same
source.
fashion.
Yep. And then Cedarwood Community Center.
Can I go back to
Oh,
Eagle
I'm
Ridge
sorry,
real
yes,
quick?
please.
I would love for us to get the master plan again, because I know that Colton and Brian have not seen it. And so if we're gonna talk about it, they should probably have something visual to look at.
We haven't seen it for a long time.
Yeah, and we haven't seen it for a long time.
And it was really a fairly rough plan. I mean, it
Yeah.
had some programmed areas, but it's never gotten beyond a schematic, so not even as detailed as what you've seen for Sunset.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's something we can provide. And once we get our contracts underway, that will be the next step. We can't, aside from, like I say, the environmental work and the cultural work, we really can't expend any money on that part because it won't count as a match. And so we're having to proceed very slowly and cautiously, and we can't go into design yet, so we don't lose that
Money.
as part of the match for our grant.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll definitely engage the park board as we get to that concept
Okay,
and can bring you up to date with the master plan as it is today.
okay.
That's fine. That we
Because
can-
Natalie will be happy to send that to you along with the sunset.
I said, we're lucky that it's a passive park, so it's not like it has to get done right away.
Right. But it doesn't mean the other program aspects that we've talked about outside of that, like doing the single track trails, improving the other trails off the
Sure.
hillside, that those aren't something we can do independently of that if we want to start activating other parts of that park.
Yes.
Okay, and then Cedarwood, we have our structural analysis going. So they're looking at the foundation of that to tell us what it will take to put that second story on there, or if it's even necessary. We've had a couple of other meetings from other user groups who might be interested in partnering with us on that site. So we'll wait and see. We met with our legislative delegation today, both our state and federal delegation. So that will be an ask to someone next year again to
Good,
help support that project.
good.
What's the address
I
of
don't
that
have
roughly?
the address.
I've been
it's-
trying to figure out where it is and
Can you
don't know
send
that
that
into
to
the
us?
lake at all.
Yeah, so if you were to head down 99th and you turn down Chapel and turn where the LDS church is.
Right?
Mhm.
And follow that straight through, and then where it Ys, you Y off to the left, and you'll be in the middle of an apartment complex, and it'll be the big building that looks like it's falling down amongst a bunch of apartments.
So that's the same spot with the fire, the Mormon church on one side, the fire
Yep.
hall, and then go south. Okay, thank you.
How many square feet was that?
About 5,000,
So do you think?
or it would be about 5,000 with 2 stories.
So, okay. I was just gonna say, do you think you need to put another story on it if it was 5,000 square?
No, it's about 2,500 right now, but it's just a big open gymnasium right now
Mhm.
and nothing else.
Where is it in the priority funding? I
It's a
mean,
big priority.
It is, okay, so it is a big priority.
Yeah, and again, with our demographics and where we're at, about 30% of our population is under 18.
Mhm.
And so we know we need to continue to program for these community spaces. So it's
Mhm.
really important, but where does it fall in the priority of all the lists? I can't tell you, but
Okay.
each one of these are going to be using
Right,
slightly different funding pots from, but we
Right.
know from a granting perspective, as a capital ask, there's definitely support. And
and there's deadlines too, right?
there'll be deadlines, but this would be more, I'm thinking a legislative ask, not a grant, but a
Okay.
direct earmark, if you will.
Okay, okay.
So what would the second floor be used for then?
So the idea would be to have flex space, so you could still have a gym space where maybe you're doing cheer or, wrestling, could be any number of indoor sports, probably not basketball. If we put a second floor, there's probably not going to be ceiling height there. And then just flexible classroom space. So you could have a couple of meeting rooms, rooms for art classes, rooms for, adult
A kitchen.
exercise, all sorts of just different community focused. Could be where Kiwanis meets, the Historical Society meets. So any number of nonprofit groups could use that space as well.
Great.
I would love to see some kind of kitchen feature that would allow for cooking classes.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that.
And that will be part of the program going in actually at the food bank.
Oh,
Okay, we've talked about Sunset Park, Centennial Woods, not the best news. We've done our initial wetland evaluation and probably 90% of the site is encumbered with wetland or wetland buffer in that forested area. Off-site where we're looking at the Puget Sound Energy property to tie into that, probably less impacted. So we still need to work through that to find out if there's still a possibility to get a long-term easement or transfer that property to the city. And once we find out about that, we'll decide if we'll move forward with programming that for anything, or we just stop. We did our feasibility and we know the constraints and look for other sites. We're continuing to work with Marysville on the Bayview Trail connector. So that would be our power line trail that would go from the southern end of our city to the northern end and then connect into the Bayview Trail with Marysville. They have a consultant on board, sort of a program over the next 5 to 10 years to build out sections of that trail. So, that again, looking out on the horizon, that's an exciting partnership.
I'm sorry, is there any more comments on the bike trail from 20th to connect over here too? Because I know that was, people were talking about there for quite a while. It's kind of stopped.
So we received funding to build a trail on the 16th. We looked at what we had on 20th Street, which you have a pretty complete sidewalk and bike lanes there already. So 16th Street down here really has nothing. So we're going to focus on making that connector at the other end of Main Street that would go out to the Centennial Trail. And also on 20th, you also have the Hartford Spur that does the same thing. So you'd have kind of redundant bike and trail path, within a quarter mile of each other. So
Right.
focus is down on 16th. And we do have funding for that project.
Can I make one suggestion about the Frontier Heights? Last time I went there, there's just one picnic table. Can they put another one somewhere farther away or?
There is more furniture there and Sarah will be figuring out where the heck that furniture is
Okay.
and make sure that her staff gets it installed up there.
Yeah, because
We have lots of furniture and I don't know where it is.
Because I went.
Being honest. Actually, I know where it is. There's a full Connex box at the public workshop of park furniture.
That's what it's on. Right?
Nice.
Yeah, because I went there and there's like one picnic table. It was all kids sitting there. And I didn't want to get out.
There is additional furniture to go with.
All right.
What's the timeline on when we think we're gonna put Amaranth or the sensory garden in?
So at Frontier Heights, we're out for a grant request right now with Recreation Conservation
So we're not
Office. Yep, I will be presenting that to them in a couple of weeks. After that point, if we're awarded, that goes to the second phase. That's more monies for active recreation. So that would go towards the pickleball courts and the turf field. And then I think the exercise stations, then we're applying for a secondary grant. If we receive that, we'll be able to move forward with the full build out, but we're going to full design on all elements. It's just which elements are we going to be able to fund with city matching funds and the grants. And say the labyrinth and the sensory garden are probably great projects that could go to the Arts and Parks Foundation to start doing, some community activity to really get the interest for that, since it's very
Okay.
specialized
Mhm, mhm.
and very
Okay.
a niche piece of a park. But,
Okay,
great projects, and we're
pass
hoping
that along.
we
Yeah.
get the funding for all of it, but if we don't, we know what the next pieces are, which are really that active recreation. And if Chris was here, he'd be the first one to tell us, the deficit
Yeah.
of space for a field. So that's
Right.
really the push there.
That's what I was gonna say too, because if the population is 30% 18 and under, we've been going over this field thing for
A
15
long
years
time,
now.
yeah.
And there's just not enough space, so, hopefully you can see that and, try to make some kind of, adjustments, so. Because if we have that many use, they have to have stuff to do, not just, go to the park and swim and that kind of stuff, so.
Will the synthetic turf take care of the drainage problem that we have? You know how
At
to-
Frontier,
Yeah.
the synthetic turf.
Like when they put,
won't
not the turf
necessarily-
itself, but when they put the turf down, will that help
The whole
not have?
park improvement will mitigate the drainage issue that's out there.
Excellent.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually going to be the most significant cost of that project is the stormwater design for that
Excellent.
facility.
Or did they already do it one time and it just didn't work?
Portions of it were done, not the entire thing hasn't been done.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because it made it so unusable for a lot, as you know. Yeah.
Yep.
Anybody else have anything for Frontier Heights or any other park update questions? Marlene?
I'm just curious about what's going on with that old dump site that's now they think it might be usable for some sort of recreation.
Yeah, that's also one of those I would put on the long-term list. We've met several times over the last couple of years with the Health District, Department of Ecology, and other interested folks, and obviously Snohomish County. So long-term, yes, once the classification of that site changes over from sort of the managed use, and I don't know all of the technical terms, but there's different classifications. Once that site hits that classification, then we'd start looking at it for a variety of passive uses, probably hiking, maybe biking, other things, like maybe even a place for RC cars or drones that you don't have in lots of areas, but it would not be an active use because we have to keep the membrane intact.
Right.
But there are some big engineering things that have to be gone through first, mainly what's called leachate. So that's the runoff from the materials inside the dump, how they're handling that leachate and making sure it's taken to, it's collected and safely gotten rid of. So there's still some big engineering things that need to be worked through, but it's a continuing conversation and there's a lot of interest over that and good partnership.
I think it's been closed now for about 40 years at least.
Yeah, about 30.
I was gonna say, if they ever thought about, I don't know, but I know that in Monroe, they're using the farm manure with the methane and use it to power a lot of houses. Is there enough methane up there that they could, no, okay.
No, there's actually not a lot of off gases still happening up there.
Thank you.
Susan or Brian, do you have anything else that you want to ask or add?
I just it's so nice to hear everybody. Sorry, Jeff had foot surgery and we were delayed. I just got home and jumped in at 6:25. So missed the part before that. But again, great to hear everything that's going on.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, this is Brian. Not surprised at all to hear the 90% wetlands at Centennial Woods. When I walked the site, I figured that much. I did have a question, Russ. I've been asked by a whole bunch of people about the boat launch as to why it was done in August, putting the new boat ramps in. And just curious why they were curious why it couldn't be done in September or October.
At Davies Beach,
Yeah, the Davies Beach one.
the city can only work in the water from mid-July to early September with fisheries requirements. So that's why we're doing the improvement now, because that's when the state says we can do the improvement.
Great, thank you.
All right, last.
And then one last question. Sorry. Has there been any additional discussion on the Cavallero Ridge Park indoor sports facility?
Lots of discussion, nothing I can share right now.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Let's move on to board member reports. Roger, do you have anything?
Yeah, I'd just like to welcome Sarah again, and you're stepping in right when things are really taking off and happening. And just wish you best of luck, and we're here to support. And
Carl,
wait, one more thing.
go ahead.
I want to thank Russ for spending years with us, hearing us complain, making us feel better. And so thank you, Russ. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. And look how much you guys have gotten done.
We call him Joe. He's really patient. No, it's been terrific.
Yeah.
So I was on the board before, so I knew the improvements we've made are dramatic.
Oh, yeah. The last 10 years.
Yep, 100%. I mean, it was, the early ones in the mid 80s were almost a zoo, but not quite. Yeah, we're gonna miss you, but we'll pick on you anyway somehow.
Good, please do.
Especially when it comes to Aquafest booth. You're a good talker.
Marlene?
Just thank you, Russ, and welcome Sarah, like everyone else. It's always great to get good people that have had experience in what you're now going to bring to our city.
And just for Susan, Brian, I think you know this, that Russ is going to be stepping away from park board meetings because Sarah, our new Parks and Rec director, is going to be taking over.
Yeah,
So-
I heard that. Thank you for the update, and we'll definitely miss you, Russ. But you'll still be
Yeah,
around,
I
right?
really appreciate you.
All around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Susan.
you wear a lot. Oh, I was just saying, yeah, no, thank you, Russ. You wear so many hats and you wear them well.
And I want to thank you too, Russ. You've taught me so much. And you have, it's amazing what you've accomplished. And I don't think you get all the credit that you should get. And yeah. But we know where you work, so we can find you should we need you.
They're not changing your number or your email.
Yeah. we know how to
Second
find
window
you.
past the door.
Mhm.
And Natalie, thank you. Your time's not up here with us yet, but just so you don't feel left out.
Mhm. And Sarah, welcome. Really excited. It really is such a step up to have a director, and I'm excited to see what happens next.
Glad to be part of it.
Yeah. I have an update regarding the Arts and Park Foundation. We, if you recall, we came up with an art design to put on the splash pad, and we have metal fish that were going to go on the outside, and the art was going to go on the inside. And now we're having discussions about maybe moving the art on the outside of the splash pad and taking the fish and putting it along the wall where the ramp is. And we will probably be bringing this to the park board we're still deciding if we think that's a good idea, and we have to chat with the city and see if that's a good idea too. But the fish, we sold our first fish, Carl's neighbor, TA, and the fishes are 12-inch, 14-inch, 16-inch. And we're asking for a donation of 100, 200, 300. And there'll be a little plaque that you can put a dedication or memorial on the fish itself. And then the fish will be adhered to
Can
something.
someone just buy a fish and put their name on it? Does it
Yes.
have to be memorial?
No, it doesn't have to be a memorial. It's a,
Okay.
yeah,
'Cause
Roger,
said
you can
memorial.
buy
That's
five.
one of
You
the
can
things.
Say Roger.
Yeah.
yeah.
And Schollenberger will take 5 just to write itself.
16 more.
Yeah.
Take half the.
And it's very easy to use the website going to the Arts and Parks Foundation.
Mhm.
Because I did it and I bought a fish.
Oh, you
Worked
guys
out.
already bought your fishes?
I did.
Oh,
Yep.
wow, I'm not there yet. Okay,
Get them while they're
I gotta
hot.
get busy.
Get a choice of fish, like perch or salmon?
No. It's a salmon. What is it, a Coke? What is it?
Kokanee?
Well, the coconut are in the lake, yeah, so it's
I know, is that what the,
salmonoid
is that what it
history,
is?
yeah.
Okay,
But
It's a
putting the
generic
tile of the, on the outside of the splash part, we figured more people are gonna see it than on the inside of the curb. So it'll be, and I think that's a big improvement.
mhm.
It's a good spot for it.
Also, it's curving this way. It'll be easier to put the tiles if it's curving the other way. It might be a little more of an issue.
Is it
It's an ongoing.
Is this the
decision.
first time
is it
you've
a
heard about
safety
this?
hazard?
No, it's not.
Okay, I'm just checking.
Yeah, our meeting is tomorrow, so
Mhm.
Is it a
Bring it
safety
back more
hazard,
next
the
time.
fish? I mean, could you cut yourself and fall out or?
I don't know how to answer that because I didn't actually hold one. I mean, I
Oh.
didn't,
What's
it's
the
on a
question?
board.
I said, is it a safety hazard, fish if someone fell into it or?
The fish?
Yeah.
Well, if they're gonna be right up against the cement.
there's gonna be
Okay.
no way to
No,
put a
no
foot on
ledge on it.
there.
They're not, yeah,
They're very thin and they'll be stuck right on
Okay.
there. with-
Yeah.
Good question. All right. Anybody else have anything else they'd like to say? All right, I need a motion to adjourn.
make a motion to adjourn.
All in second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Hi.
And we are adjourned.
Bye, everybody.
Bye,
Good night.
Susan. Bye, Brian.